Today is a special day in the life of Westside. It is All Saints' Day. We remember the people who have come before us, who have inspired us, who have shaped us, and who in many ways have left a legacy for us. It's also the final Sunday of our Pathways to Generosity series as we have prepared ourselves to bring forth our commitments for the coming year. And we celebrate Pastor Penny, who's doing some cleanup work as we speak right now, continuing to work through her final days with us. But she's been here 13 years and touched many of our lives. As we conclude our series on generosity, I want to shift our focus away from measuring the size of our gifts, because in God's eyes, it's not the amount that we give, it's the love and intention behind it that matters most. Whether large or small, every gift offered in faith is part of God's transformative work in the world. This past week, watching the World Series reminded me that in baseball, we often celebrate the big moments, the walk-off grand slam, the diving catch, the dazzling double play. But as Yankee fans, myself included, learned the hard way, it's often the small actions. A bunt, a sacrifice fly, closing the glove at just the right moment, that can change the game. In God's kingdom, the same is true. The smallest of acts can make the largest difference. We saw this in spades here at Westside on Saturday as 80 people gathered downstairs, part of our work, Rise Against Hunger. Pastor Christine and the Family Life and Mission Committee organized this wonderful event. And we were all there doing small tasks. Some of you were putting rice together with beans and dried vegetables and vitamins. Others of you were taking that mixture and putting it into bags. Some of you were weighing those bags to make sure they were just the right amount. Others of us were sealing it. Little tiny fingers were putting stickers on the bags, and some of us were putting those bags into boxes. Each act so small, seemingly insignificant, but working together, we were able to create 10,000 bags of food that will feed 236 children for an entire school year. In the Gospel of Marc, we see Jesus watching all these witnesses of generosity, one after the other. And if you could imagine the scene, there are metal containers in front of the temple. And when you drop coins, if you got a lot of money, it makes a loud noise. But yet, with all that clanking, it was just the tiny clink of the poor widow's gift that Jesus noticed. And he wanted the disciples to see that. And he said, all these others, they've given out of their abundance, but this woman has given all she had. In John's gospel, we see Jesus doing something similar. How God multiplies just the smallest of gifts. This little boy, 5 loaves, 2 fishes, thousands of hungry people. A seemingly small gift, but one that Jesus blesses and multiplies so that everybody is fed and there's even some leftovers. Our acts of generosity are like the butterfly effect in nature that scientists talk about. This idea that a butterfly flapping its wings here in our community can change the weather patterns in such a way that it can set off a chain of events to create a storm halfway around the world. In the same way, small gifts, small acts of kindness, small gestures, small notes can create a ripple of grace that can reach further than we could ever see or imagine. We didn't have 2 pennies for 13 years. We had 1 penny. 1 penny. And her ministry with us is a beautiful example of this same ripple effect. How could we have ever known 13 years ago when we called Penny to be our pastor? How could she ever know at that point the effect that she would have and has had? And yet every conversation, every gesture, every act of leadership has created a ripple of grace that continues to move through the community and into the world, that blesses people long after she's gone. I've experienced this ripple effect in my own life. I was reminded this year when I was a 14-year-old freshman in college. As part of my journalism project, I decided for whatever reason to interview my childhood pastor. I probably spent an hour in his study with him, asking him all kinds of questions, but that simple conversation planted a seed of faith in my own life, one that eventually grew into a call to pastoral ministry. A couple years later, as he battled cancer, that same pastor continued to preach and continued to serve, embodying faith in the face of his struggle with cancer. And one of his final sermons was entitled, "When Life Gives You Lemons, Make Lemonade." And I watched him do that. A powerful witness to resilience and faith. At my ordination 25 years ago, this Halloween that we just celebrated, his widow was at my ordination. And after the service, she handed me his communion set. And every time I use that communion set, I'm reminded it's the small things with great love that make the biggest difference. The small, steady acts of faith over many years. That's what defines us. Linda Ellis's poem, The Dash, speaks of this truth so beautifully. The poem reflects on the line between the dates on the tombstone, the dash between the beginning of our lives and the end. Ellis writes, "For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love, and how we spend our dash." It's not about what we accumulate. It's how we live. It's how we love. It's how we fill that precious and fragile space between our beginning and our ending. Each of us has an opportunity to fill that dash with intention, with purpose, with generosity, and with love. And when we do that, we follow in the footsteps of the saints who've gone before us. And people like Penny, who've poured out their hearts, a heart overflowing with grace and with love. In a few moments, we'll have the opportunity to add our commitments, our intentions to those that have come before us. To bring forward our commitments, recognizing it's not about the size, it's about the spirit behind the gift and the giver. Like the widow's 2 coins, like these 5 loaves and fishes, each gift, no matter how small, has the potential to be multiplied by God. Each of us holds a piece of this church's future in your hands. A chance to embody God's love through these tangible gifts in a world that is so desperate to know and to experience this love. As we prepare again to come to the table as we do monthly in this service, let's remember that that is in fact what Jesus did. In the middle of all that was happening at that time when Jesus came into the city to celebrate Passover, as the political, religious authorities are conspiring against him, his weapon was love. And at the table he reminded that the smallest act, this is my body, this is my blood, can have a ripple effect that continues to move through the ages and through the saints and through all of us now. For it is not the size of the gift that matters, it's the love and the lover behind it that matters most. So let's be willing to be participants in God's transformative work in us, in this community, and in our world. Amen.